Everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share with all of you a comparison between the Pat McGrath and Lisa Eldridge liquid eyeshadows. So recently, Pat McGrath came out with these new liquid eyeshadows, and I'm not actually someone who likes liquid eyeshadows normally. For most makeup products, I prefer powder, and definitely that's been the case for eyeshadows. But because Pat McGrath is my favorite makeup brand, and in particular my favorite eyeshadow brand, I figured I would give this a shot, so I picked up her shade Platinum Bronze, and then in the process of doing research into liquid eyeshadows, I also saw a lot of great things about Lisa Eldridge's. She is also one of my other favorite makeup brands, and so I decided to pick up this shade from her as well. It's Anais or Anais. Not totally sure, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. So I have worn both of these a few times now. This is not going to be a first impressions, but I wanted to share with you guys my thoughts about the formulas and also demo them side by side. So if you, like me, are kind of curious about how these two formulations compare, then just stick around. So let's start off by talking about packaging. So this is the box that the Pat McGrath eyeshadows come in. This was released as part of her Valentine's Day Love collection, which is why we see the heart here. And here is the packaging for the actual eyeshadow. It's overall quite simple. It's kind of a hard plastic packaging with this black top, and it has some gold detailing around it. I must say it's not the most luxurious packaging. It's nice. It definitely doesn't feel cheap. There is some weight in the hand, but as you can see, the detailing is just at the surface of the product. There's not much that's special about the shape of the component. The boxes that the Lisa Eldridge shadows come in is more minimalist. It's her typical white box that has her gold logo on it. And then the eyeshadow itself comes in a heavy plastic bottle with this brushed gold top. I will say that the Lisa Eldridge packaging, at least to me, seems a lot more chic and luxurious in comparison to the Pat McGrath. Here they are side by side for comparison. The Lisa Eldridge is a little bit smaller though than the Pat McGrath. In terms of value, the two eyeshadows are very similar in price. So the Pat McGrath retails for $29, the Lisa Eldridge for $27, but there is a huge difference in the amount of product. So the Pat McGrath comes with almost twice as much product as the Lisa Eldridge. For me personally, that doesn't really matter that much in that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to finish either of these, but did want to note that because if you want to use liquid eyeshadow as your kind of everyday shade, the Pat McGrath is a lot more bang for your buck in terms of having twice as much product for only $2 more. Now let's do some swatches. So here we have the Lisa Eldridge shade. And here is the Pat McGrath shade. So yes, I got two different shades, so this isn't a direct comparison necessarily, but hopefully this at least gives you some sense of the formulation. They both are very wet and also very high shine. Let me actually blend them out a little bit so maybe you can see some of the texture a bit more. I did decide to do these two different shades because I wanted to be able to put together more diverse looks with these. So one thing I'll say in terms of how they look blended out is that they both have a very high shine and sparkle content. For context, the Lisa Eldridge ones vary a bit in terms of how sparkly they are. This particular shade is one of the more glittery shades, whereas the Pat McGrath ones I think are all in the same formulation. So comparing these two, I would say they both are similar in terms of how high shine they are. But the Lisa Eldridge does have slightly different sizes of glitter particles, so I think it has a little bit more of a twinkle effect to it, whereas the Pat McGrath has a little bit more of a consistent glittery shine to it, which gives it almost more of a metallic finish. And I just double checked, the name for this shadow is Anais, so that's the correct pronunciation, not Anais or whatever I was saying before. And Lisa Eldridge describes this as an antique pewter with sage green undertones, shot through with a harmonious blend of silver, pale pink, and gold glittery pearls. So let's go ahead and get this on the lids. I was very attracted to that shade description. In general, I think Lisa Eldridge basically has the best shade descriptions. it's really inspiring to hear about how she thinks about color. So that for me definitely sold me. So I'm going to first just apply this with a finger to show you how that looks. That has in general been how I've been using both of these liquid eyeshadows, and I must say it's surprisingly very easy. I say surprisingly because I have tried some liquid eyeshadows in the past that were not so easy to blend out with a finger. And so I wasn't expecting much, honestly. Like that's why I, in general, am not a huge fan of liquid eyeshadows. But both of these work pretty well. Like, there we go. You know, while I was talking, you guys saw in real time how that blended out, and it looks really nice. I think obviously the shade is quite easy to work with in general because it's not that pigmented. So even if you did have patchiness, I don't think it would be that visible. But that said, I don't think it is patchy at all. It looks very smooth on the lids. Let me actually bring you guys closer so you can see more clearly yourself. And one thing I like about these is with a finger, it's actually very easy to blend out the edge. Like I don't think you see any sort of harsh edge where I applied it. And that was very impressive to me because for me, I think the main advantage of liquid eyeshadows is being able to apply them with your finger and not having to go through your brushes. And at least for this formula, that seems to be the case. In terms of the shade, I will say, at least on my eyes, I'm not seeing as many of the colors and multidimensionality that came with the shade description. It does mostly have that pewter look to it. I actually originally thought it would have a little bit more sage green, but at least on my skin tone, I think the sage green is not necessarily coming across a lot. Still super beautiful shade though. No complaints for me in terms of that, but did want to just mention that because I don't know that you actually can see that much of the pale pink or gold. I don't know, maybe you can see it a little bit more in the swatch. I think you can at least tell it's not just all silver glitter. But definitely on the eyes, it doesn't necessarily translate as much. So now let's go in with the other side, Platinum Bronze, and let's sweep this over here. A little bit does go a long way with these shades. I have cleaned off my finger, and so I'm gonna just go in with that same finger so we keep everything very consistent. I do think with the Pat McGrath, a smaller amount also goes a slightly longer way. It could just be because I picked a more pigmented shade, but I do also feel like the formula is a little bit thicker, and so you can get more payoff with a smaller amount. But there we go. So again, very easy to blend out. Even though this is a deeper shade, I think it was super quick and easy. One thing I really like about both of these formulas is they set pretty well. So on the one hand, it's not like they set too quickly where you don't have enough time to blend them out. I think there is enough play time. Usually when I've worn these, I've put the product on both eyes and then blended one out and then the other. And I haven't had any issues with the second eye looking patchy. So that's been great. But at the same time, they do set quickly enough that you don't really have issues with creasing. At least I haven't experienced any issues with creasing. So that's something that has impressed me because that was definitely a worry I had with liquid shadows. In general, I do have a bunch of creases around my eyes, and so I didn't want them to just be swimming in those creases, but I think it's looking pretty good. I don't know, what do you guys think? And with sheer layers on both lids, I think it's a little bit easier to see some of the similarities and differences now. I think I might have applied slightly less product on this side than this side, so this is a little bit more sheer. But on the whole, I would say comparing these two, the formulation in terms of how it performs feels very similar. This side maybe looks a little bit more gilded, a little bit more twinkling in terms of having different sizes and layers of glitter. Whereas again, I feel like this side has more of a uniform look to it because the glitter is more kind of one size and one color. And so it does give it a bit more of kind of a metallic with some glitter look. whereas this side is less metallic and more just kind of twinkly and glittery. So now for the lower lash line, I'm going to start to even out the eyes, and so on both sides I'm going to go in with platinum bronze kind of in the outer portions, and I just usually draw it on, and I'm going in with my Rephr number 12 brush just to kind of blend that out. You can as well, if you're very careful, use a finger to blend this out. For today's look, I'm just gonna use a brush. And I think you can see it's very quick and easy to blend out on the lower lash line, which I really appreciate. I think also the applicator being a bit on the thinner side makes it quite easy to do a more targeted placement, so that way you don't have to worry about it getting all over the place. Now let's go in with that Lisa Eldridge and put that on kind of the inner 2/3. And similarly, I'm just going to run that brush along the lower lash line. I really love how easy both of these formulations are. It's honestly something that was kind of shocking to me because, again, I am not a liquid eyeshadow person. In general, I feel like most liquid products, at least for me, are just a little bit more finicky because with powder, you just have a lot of control. But I don't know, I found this very, very fast and easy so far. And definitely one advantage of this liquid formulation is you don't have any fallout, which usually for shadows that are this glittery, you would have a decent amount of fallout on the cheek area. So now to even out the lid area, I'm gonna try some different techniques. I honestly haven't tried these before, so we're gonna see how this works together. First, I'm gonna go in with platinum bronze on the Anais side, and just gonna put this in the outer portion because I wanna use this as a deepening shade. And then I have this Esom V35 brush, which is a synthetic hair brush. And I'm gonna just slowly work that out. Okay, I might have put too much product, but that's okay. We're gonna just figure it out. The Pat McGrath one definitely applies quite a lot of product straight out, so be a little bit careful because, again, the thickness of the formula just means that it is pretty opaque with a small amount. And wow, it is actually drying quite quickly as well, so I probably should have started with a lighter layer, but I think it's still working out. It's interesting because I was thinking of this as a deepening shade because the base pigment is deeper, but as you can see, there's so much reflectivity to this platinum bronze shade. It is a very high shine shade, so in hindsight, it's probably not the best crease color, but we are learning together, yes. Interesting. Okay, so I think when I look straight on, you can maybe see a little bit of the depth sort of here. That's where the light's not directly hitting it. But definitely when I turn my head this way, it's very bright and very silvery. Okay, so on the other side, I'm going to first apply a little bit more of platinum bronze in the outer portion to make sure we have kind of a similar effect in terms of opacity out in this corner area. I applied a little bit less though this time, so hopefully it's a lot easier to work out. Okay, yeah, I think this is actually the way to do it. It's looking very smooth. Okay, there we go. So this is kind of how a brush application looks. I think that's pretty good overall. And then going in with Anais, I'm going to put this on the inner 2/3 of the eye. Let's just start with that much for now. And with my BK Beauty 203 brush, I'm just going to brush that out. See how easy that is to control. All right, that's actually looking really nice. Again, I think I might have applied a little bit too much, but that's okay. It's just a bit more pigmented maybe than the other side. I feel like now this eye is looking a lot more sparkly than the other side, but it's okay. We'll just keep layering until these two sides are even. So I'm going to take a little bit on that other side as well. And I feel like as I'm layering this, I'm definitely seeing a little bit more of the sage, so that's really great. I do love sage colors. But this is also nice because it means that you can have a really pretty look that is a little bit more sheer, but also, as you can see, you can really build it up as well. Wow, okay. My lids are really, really shiny, wow. I am very impressed, actually. Ooh, that is nice. Alrighty, so now I'm just gonna go in and make sure everything is fully blended, but honestly, I feel like it was really effortless. Again, I never thought I would be saying effortless for liquid shadows or, I mean, liquid products in general. I generally find them to be a little bit more complicated, for me at least, to use than powder, but wow. That is really nice. And I think built up, you really see a little bit more of the advantage of the liquid shadow, because even though I could probably get a similar effect to this by going in with my Pat McGrath Blitz Astral shades or my indie shadows, I would definitely get way more fallout than what I'm seeing here. I mean, there's literally no fallout, so it's pretty hard to compete with that. And at least in my previous wears, this has been very long lasting and has not creased. So let's see if that holds true for today as well. This is more layers of the eyeshadow than I have applied previously. So I went off camera to finish off the rest of the eye look. What do you guys think? As always, if you're curious about any of the products that I have on my face today, they will be linked in the description box below. So now that we've finished today's eye look, let's talk through these two formulations. So first off, I would definitely say that these two have a lot more commonalities than they have dissimilarities. So on the whole, I would say if you are interested in either, I would definitely recommend them, and a lot of it might just come down to which shades you find more interesting. I think both of these shades are really great starting points because they're relatively neutral, very everyday friendly, and you can also combine them like I did today if you want to have a slightly more multi-dimensional look, though definitely each of these on their own packs enough oomph for a one and done. To test out how these are doing now that I have had them on my hand for a while, let's try kind of scooching them around. So there is a little bit of movement that happens, as you can see, especially the Pat McGrath one. I think it's not fully dried down yet because I put so much of it, whereas the Lisa Eldridge, there's a little bit less. But as you can see, they definitely are not completely budge proof, at least given the amount of time that has passed. But despite that, at least on the lids, they're not creasing at all, which is really great. And like I said, I've never had any issues kind of in the 3 times I've worn these now with them creasing, so that's really great. I think they have a good mix of enough pliability and workability that the product's not really going to be totally fixed in place where you can't blend it out anymore, but at the same time it is very long lasting. So I don't think there are any performance differences that lead to one being better than the other. But in terms of differences in formulations, I would say that for one, the Pat McGrath is definitely a little bit thicker in texture in comparison to the Lisa Eldridge. I don't think that really affects anything in terms of how well they apply or blend out, but it does mean that if you're using the Pat McGrath, you probably want to be a little bit more careful and put a smaller amount of product initially on the lids and blend that out first instead of just kind of sweeping it all around. The Lisa Eldridge, being a thinner formula, has less risk of you over applying it. And I think in these swatches as well, you can see that thickness. There's just a lot more product from that one swipe of the Pat McGrath compared to the one swipe of the Lisa Eldridge. The other difference is with the kind of shimmer particles they have. Hopefully you can see this a little bit more clearly now, but in general with the Pat McGrath, there's more shimmer, and also the shimmer is a little bit more uniform in size. Looking closely, there are actually multiple shades of shimmer in the Pat McGrath. It's not just silver. There is a little bit of bronziness as well, but on the whole, I would say there is more of a uniform texture to the Pat McGrath shimmer. Whereas for the Lisa Eldridge, there's maybe a little bit less shimmer in terms of the really big shimmer particles, but it seems like there's more variability in the color and the size of the shimmer particles, which leads to a slightly different effect. Again, I think the Pat McGrath tends to look a little bit more high shine metallic with glittery particles, whereas the Lisa Eldridge looks a little bit more muted, but more of kind of a glistening effect with a wide variety of different sizes of shimmer. If the amount of shimmer and shine that you're seeing with these shadows seems a little bit too much for you, then I would recommend looking into some of the Lisa Eldridge ones that are on the more smooth shimmer side of things rather than the really high shine ones. Anais is supposed to be one of the most glistening ones in her collection. On the whole though, both of these are really beautiful and I would highly recommend them, which again is kind of a surprise for me because I picked these two up really not thinking I would necessarily like them, just because I don't like liquid eyeshadows, or at least that's what I thought before I picked them up. And since then I've definitely had to reevaluate that opinion, because every time I've used these, they've been really quick and easy to work with and just very mesmerizing and beautiful on the eyes. So I would love to hear in the comments what you guys have thought about either of these formulations. Are you interested in picking up either of them? If you have some in your collection, I would love to know what your favorite shades are, because now that I've really enjoyed both of these, I'm interested in picking up more shades and maybe creating some more intricate looks out of them. So you might be seeing some more liquid eyeshadows in my content going forward. So that's it for today's video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!